And welcome, everybody, to another edition of Center of Attention. And my God, this is a new look. Wow, we're in a different place. And Atan got a lot whiter. No.
Exactly.
I had to go there. Atan can't do every day, and we have a plethora of people that we lean on, that we go to, and he is one of the best. Danny Schayes played in the NBA. I know him as a Syracuse guy because we did a show together up there. And we have been friends now for a while. And Danny, I literally asked you when you called me yesterday out of the blue, because we don't talk every day. We talk once a couple of weeks. And you called me just to shoot the bull and see how things were going. And all of a sudden, I had just literally found out that I didn't have somebody for today. And I go, wait a minute, can you do this? Can you do this?
And for you, Seth, you have but to ask.
Yeah,
and just,
asked, and
just one clarification though. I've been losing weight, so I no longer count as a plethora. Just so you know.
There you go. Well, that's
at least
because
not
we
by
dropped
myself.
the S off centers of attention because that's against the law because we don't own that. We don't own centers of attention. We went with the DJ look. This is a DJ look, and Andrew says, I feel as though I should turn off the lights in my office. There are literally levels every time we talk. There are lights that are going up and down every time we talk, and I think it's so fun. I met one of the guys over at Streamlabs, this guy named Matt, and he got me motivated to play around, and I'm playing around, and this is what it looks like. So not only do we have a different guy on the left side, and when we go to a guest, because we have a guest today, the great Mike Waters from Syracuse.com is going to tell us what the hell's going on up there. When that happens, we are going to honestly have a different screen and watch what we're going to do. This is just a test. When we go to Mike Waters, Danny, you're not going to see anything, but everybody else will. This is what it's going to look like.
Wow, that's cool.
Wow, that's awesome. And that'll be bigger, so then we can go smaller because our boxes will get smaller on Zoom because we will have a third person. And that's going to look cool. And then when we say goodbye to Mike, we'll go like this. And just like that, we're back here in the thing. As always, if you're new and you have Amazon Prime, who doesn't have Amazon Prime? I don't know anybody that doesn't have Amazon Prime. I'm being honest. I know people that are super wealthy and super poor, and they all have Amazon Prime. Everybody I know has Amazon Prime. If you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe to this channel, and you're going to want to, but you can do it for free. You can do it absolutely for free. You don't pay a dime. Just link your Amazon Prime with your Twitch account, and voila, you can subscribe for free. And because we went with the Rockstar purple look, I wore the Prince t-shirt. I wanted to, I had to represent.
And I'm legendary, so.
And you didn't, yeah. I don't blame you, and you didn't. But
well,
that's
it's still
fine.
legendary. You could have told me sooner.
And I fixed my mic. And since we started this Twitch show, my mic has been super low. And now I have this device here that makes it super loud. And I actually have to lower it, which has never been my problem forever. So this is all new things. How have you been? You're in Arizona?
I'm in Arizona, and it looks like I have to get out and get more sun now. I'm a little
pale, yeah.
A little pale looking, but it just wasn't hot enough in Denver. We've had a nice heat wave here, 111 to 115 every day. It feels great. Yeah. You get over 50, those muscles get nice and loose out in the heat. And we had our first haboob in a while yesterday.
A what?
Which is those galactic sandstorms that blow through town. So
what do they
some
call it?
places have hurricanes, earthquakes, rainstorms. We just every once in a while, every couple times a year, get these sandstorms. Looks like the old Indiana Jones outtake. And yesterday was enough to shut down the highway. It was actually a pretty good one.
But correct me if I'm wrong. It's a haboob?
Haboob, yes. That's the official term.
That's an official term. That's a real
thing. And I think
thing?
it's Arabic for big wind or something like that.
That's a real thing. Who knew?
It's a real thing, yeah. Google it and just check the Phoenix weather. They beautiful. Like I said, it looks like an Indiana Jones movie with the thing coming over the mountains and swarming up the city. It was pretty cool.
Oh, that's spooky. That's pretty spooky. Obviously, the thing that's going to tick me off is the college scene, and like I said, we'll get into that with Mike Waters. And it's just going to feel like an old day because we used to have Mike Waters on the Syracuse show, and Mike Waters is coming on, and he's going to tell us what's going on campus because I want to understand this. North Carolina had a plan to have everyone come on campus. Like, that was the plan. And it has been, I don't want to say 50-50. I don't know the exact numbers of what schools are doing virtual and what schools are doing on campus. But I'm not happy that Syracuse is doing on campus. I'm scared and I don't like it. And I'm going on a week from Thursday. And I just want an email. Every minute, I want an email that says, hey, let's do an email and let's just tell you that you're not coming and you're going virtual. Well, in North Carolina, they're kids. And they've been cooped up like everybody else has. And they partied, and there were 4 different clusters, and 130 people tested positive. And did you see the headline? This is the greatest headline in the world. Did you see the headline from the North Carolina student paper?
I did not.
Oh my God! I'm putting it on. I'm getting it on, and I'm going to put it on the screen. Danny's not going to see it, but it is one of the funniest things I've ever seen, and I'll put it.
So correct me. Didn't it start in a sorority house? Wasn't that like the first cluster?
It might be.
I thought that's when they announced the story. I thought it was they had like 23 cases in one of the sororities.
The front page, and I'm putting it on the screen. How do I put this on the screen? No, that's not what I want. How do I do this? Oh, there you go. I'm putting it on the screen. Oh no, I don't know how to put it on this. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to put it on the screen. But it literally says UNC has a clusterfuck on its hands. That was the line. And it was great. And somebody on Twitter had, to me, the greatest line was, can someone give them the Pulitzer Prize right now? And that made me laugh. I saw that last night, and this was the campus of North Carolina, and I'll show you how it ties into sports because I want to get your thought. So they didn't have a plan. They don't have a proper social distancing plan. No one followed the rules that they did put in place. 130 cases in 2 days, mind you. And they sent everybody home. The only people that are staying are the goddamn football players. Your thoughts?
Well, it's much easier to put the football players in a bubble if there's no students around. This is such a compelling story for so many reasons because
isn't that
number
prison?
One, what's that?
Isn't that prison though?
Well, they got work release. So that's the good news.
Yeah,
what makes this so compelling is, in the past I've railed against the concept that you have the NCAA has football and basketball driving the revenue for all 29, 30 sports, but the players themselves take all the risk and none of the benefit outside of playing. And basketball, specifically, the best players are there a year or two, so they really get no value of college. And it's totally skewed where all the risk goes to the players, all the benefits go to the schools. And, so we've railed against that under the heading of, allow the players to earn money in college. Don't pay them, don't give them money, but to do an autograph signing, to do a, commercial. And I get there's all these tampering issues, but look, you have issues one way or the other. And I think that it would help players stay in school if they could earn a few bucks for their family instead of racing. I talked about perverse incentives. Players, we're talking about only the top players, right, who go to school to earn a living as a pro. And the NCAA and the NBA want them to stay in school, talking basketball only, of course, at this point, but same for football. They want you to stay in school, but all the incentives drive you out of school. So and now that's finally being addressed. But now you have the opposite situation, where by canceling football, and this becomes this big cost benefit. By canceling football, it affects the careers of the other X number of sports that Carolina has or Syracuse has, up to the whatever they play, 30-ish sports for the NCAA. So you cancel one, you cancel them all. The vast majority of athletes will not get COVID, will not have lingering effects, but yet you're making them all pay. I'm not saying which side I'm on. It's incredibly complicated, but it's not just the issue of, well, the only issue is nobody should get COVID, because again, there's a huge price to pay on the other side of this equation. And the question is, how do you protect the players. The NBA and the NHL have done bubbles. They've had the advantage of a very short time period. There's only 10 games left in the season.
Expensive bubbles, yes.
And the playoffs. And it's hugely expensive and difficult to do. Football and baseball have not. So now you've got at least, two scenarios to look at. College has its own complications. But again, from the revenue side, it's just too simplistic to say, one case is too many. Because, by canceling football and or basketball, you cancel the futures of however many tens of thousands of athletes who never get that year back. Pros can get the year back, or they can extend or get their contracts paid.
Because they've already reached that level. You make that
exactly. They're already there.
Only 2%. Only 2% touch the pros, and
exactly. So this college is a super complex because it has all the risks, maybe additional risks, as you talked about, and the only benefit is to be able to play. There's no backup plan. They can give you another year of eligibility, but if you're not going pro and you graduated, it just makes it so complex. I've been on the side of play if you can without taking risks, because there clearly are risks. Nobody knows the long-term effects. Is it the flu? You get it, you get over it, you're done, you're immune, or is it you get it, you get over it, and who knows if you have some lingering thing? That's the unanswered question. There have been signs that there are some long-term effects. To doubly complicate it. But again, it's just not as simple as saying, nobody should get a case, so let's do everything to not get a case.
No. That's never been what my assumption has been. I want to clarify my position because the audience that's been watching from day and day, we've been talking about this for a long time. So I want to make sure you understand what my issue is the college athletes are not paid, and they have. And that's a complicated issue. And to put them in isolation just seems very unfair. Whereas if you're asking a professional to do it, a professional has the opt-out option. Tuukka Rask of the Boston Bruins said, this doesn't feel right. I don't want to be a part of this. I'm out. And he had that choice. Baseball players opted out all over the place. The Cleveland Indians almost had a mutiny in their clubhouse because these two idiots went out. And the problem that I'm finding with college kids is in football. Now, basketball, we haven't gone to basketball, and I want to hold off because basketball's got months. But football, I think, is too hard to isolate. I think it's too hard. And the reason is the sheer size of it. It's hundreds of people. And
right.
And that's
and not just the players. Don't forget, it's just we're not talking about just the players.
Trainers, the coaches, the
equipment guys, the travel,
everybody.
All that. It's they found the NBA bubble is I'm trying to remember how many. There's like 500 players, but the total number is like 1,500 people in the bubble to run the games. And so getting back to your point, yes, it's exponentially more complex than football.
Right, and football is such a contact sport, and it's not to demean baseball or basketball, but even though there's levels of contact, not like football. Football, you're literally on every play have to tackle somebody.
Everybody, like they all get into a pile.
There's a big difference, and my argument for a football is I have the same philosophy that I have about my kid's school. Because my kid's school has been disappointing in the sense, and I'm not one of those annoying, obnoxious parents, but I logged on to the virtual Board of Ed meeting. I wanted to hear a good plan, and they don't have one. And so my attitude has been, not forever. I'm not saying never again, but starting the day after Labor Day, when school starts, my kids are staying home, and they're doing the virtual plan. There are other people down my street that are saying, we're going to school. And my response has been, and I don't mean to be callous about this, and you can call me a jerk if you want, let those idiots be the guinea pigs. And if they come out in 6 weeks or 4 weeks, however long you want to do it, and they say, this has been working great. Everyone's following the rules, and school's been amazing, and because the classes are smaller, it's very intimate, let's do it. I will call the principal, and I'll say, can my little kid come on Monday? And they'll say yes. So what am I worried about? And what I'm saying, and this is very prejudiced and very obnoxious, but could the SEC idiots be the guinea pigs and not my ACC?
Well, I'll make one, and I totally get what you're saying. And I only have one issue with it, and that is the fact that your neighbor made another choice doesn't make them idiots.
No, I never said they were.
They're looking at the same facts you are.
Yep.
And their risk reward. Look, let's say you have to, in this case, you have two parents who work. You can't leave the kid home, so either somebody has to quit their job, or you have to put them in daycare. Which
you're right.
How's
and
that
I'm
different?
Very lucky. I can do
school?
Most of my work at home. You're right.
Exactly. So there's a cost benefit here, right? Your cost benefit is it's an interruption to have little kids running around needing attention when you're on the air. But it's also a cost benefit if somebody has to stay home, whether it's, the income disruption, maybe one doesn't make enough to carry the family. I have friends here locally who've got two little kids, elementary school age, and they're like, and the husband's like, man, I got to get out of the house. This is driving me nuts. My wife's a realtor. She had to basically quit. And, so it's a big burden. He can squeak by. He makes enough to carry it for a period of time, but not everyone does. And it's a painful choice to have to make. And that's why you do the math. And, little kids, again, the science is that they're maybe not as susceptible, not as whatever, time will tell, as you said. And the same thing with college football. There's a huge cost and there's a huge benefit to playing. So there's, somebody's got to do the calculus. How do you minimize the cost, right? The risk through the protocols, and, be able to still not only, support the players to play, which they obviously want to, but also the thousands of people who rely on it. I mean, I don't know if you read the mayor of Tuscaloosa said, if we don't have football here, our city is essentially out of business.
I know.
That's their Christmas. They rely so much on the football money for the home games, but that drives the entire city. Without that, so what's the cost of Tuscaloosa going out of business, or whatever the fallout?
That's fine. Okay.
You read about the high school kids.
But I'd rather hear that. Hold on. Before you continue, I'd rather hear that than Ed Orgeron going, "It's our American right. We have to play, and we got to do this." Shut the hell up. Continue.
Yeah. Well, or the high school recruits who have no winter season or no fall football season. The seniors. My son's a senior basketball player, and looks like as of now, their season's going to be fine. But the whole summer of club tournaments, this big exposure season disappeared. Now we got to actually recruit colleges versus the other way around. Put together videos, send them out. So these huge complications have ripple in ways that we haven't really even thought through the end zone yet, right? And Carolina is to have that outbreak is like kind of the worst case scenario. Like the first day, boom, you have an outbreak that, couldn't you get halfway through the season where everyone's committed and then you got to come up with a fix, not just shut everything down, So just like when baseball started, it limped along, bunch of games got canceled the first week. So we're going to see if they can finish that season. It's even a 60-game season, it's a pretty long season to start from game one, right? So, hard to put in a bubble.
Well, and we're going to get to the pro sports because they all have their own stories and they all have all their things. But I think the college thing is the most compelling. And yeah, you're right. I don't celebrate any of this. Like, I'm not one of those people, and there's been a huge accusation going on around the media that the media wants this all to so that the NCAA and the colleges get knocked off their high horse. And I heard Jay Paterno this morning, who with Penn State, and they were talking about the impact that no Big Ten is going to have on State College. And this is the same State College that I wanted to have the death penalty. And I thought, right. I did a lot of research. On what the economic impact would have been. I stand by my statement. They should have had the death penalty. And we can get into that later if you want to go there. My point being is, if you're telling me that someone's going to try it because there's no governing body, there's no, the NCAA is useless here. This is all the conferences. And you had to tell me only a handful of the Power 5 conferences would do it, right? Like, they would do it. I just don't want it to be my school.
Yeah.
Because what I don't want to do, I would be mortified right now if I found out that there's 130 positive cases on Syracuse's campus. And I'm selfish that way. And
the reality is there probably is. With so many people being asymptomatic, if you tested all, 20,000 students, I'm sure you're going to find some number, whatever it is, 100, 1,000, 5,000, who knows? I'm sure there are. If you tested 350 million Americans, there'd be 40 million positive tests, and most people don't know. So it's, and that's what makes it so complicated. And because there isn't like a clear right way to do it, right? It's 100% compelling on your side of, let somebody else be the guinea pig. It's 100% compelling on the other side of, I can't, it affects, exponentially more people who wouldn't have gotten it, but are still, driven out of business, whatever you want to call that, or have a penalty. There isn't just a clear answer. So I think the fact that half the schools basically have said yes and half have said no is kind of, how it's working out. And at the end of the day, you now have kind of a controlled study, right? You have the no's, what do they do? And the yeses, what happens to them? Just like you have in the pro sports, which you can talk more about later. But if you think about it, what do the college football players do who aren't playing football? They're not going to be in quarantine for the rest of their lives. They're out. If their college is open, they're out in college. If they're home, they're still living their lives. There isn't just like one really clear way to do this.
But the alarms for young kids, what I can't accept is what Jim Boeheim said, which is stupider than stupid, which is nobody under 25 dies from this, and there are no health impacts. They get sick for a little bit, and they're fine. That's not true. And all you have to do is look at the Boston Red Sox pitcher, Eduardo Rodriguez, 27 years old, perfectly healthy, a major league athlete, and now his career may be over because he has an enlarged heart. And that's right. That's from COVID. So when you have 300-pound linemen who are obese just based on the body mass index, that's not to say they're not athletes. They are ridiculously high risk. And again, that's football. And if you are a professional football player that's getting paid and you had a chance to opt out, then go for it. That's how this is going. And
well, I think there's also two major issues that need to be examined if you really want to get down into the weeds. And that is, what are the protocols in place? Are they enough to, you never ensure, but, to give the best shot at a healthy outcome? And are the players following them? And which the second question is more problematic than the first question. When you hear stories about Liberty not testing anyone, they obviously got their asses chewed out, and now supposedly they're changing that. But, are the protocols enough? The NBA was able to, do the extreme version, and NHL put players in a bubble, test them daily, because the numbers are what they are, and
but they don't know. They don't know that they can do that going forward. Like, and we haven't talked about that because I don't think it's relevant. But the NHL is not committing to a bubble next year, and neither is the NBA. They don't know if they can inspire that. I want to say hey to Caleb and Don and Andrew and everyone else that's been in there in the chat, and people saying that they like the look. And I love the look. And I only put the Syracuse logo in the top right because Danny's here. And I'll probably leave it there when Atan's here. But, when somebody that's not from Syracuse comes on, and by the way, Mike Waters is supposed to come on in a little bit, and he is there. So we can get him on. Don, stick around for this. You got to watch what's going to happen here. We are going to bring on Mike Waters from Syracuse.com. Watch this. And with that, we welcome in our man, Mike Waters. Mike, welcome. How are you?
I'm good, Seth. How are you doing?
It's been such a long time. How are you? You remember Danny Schayes? He's a big fan of yours.
I'm sorry, Mike, is it?
Dolph?
Good to see you, man.
Dolph.
Give me a fist bump. Elbow. What do we do? What's the protocol? Head bump. Headbutt. There we go.
How you doing, Danny?
I'm great, baby. Good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
Mike, let's start with this. I have a very serious prejudice when it comes to Syracuse, and I saw the North Carolina story, and I don't want that happening to my Disneyland. Syracuse is my Disneyland. I love it there. That's my place, and I don't want this nonsense, and I want the ACC to go by the way of the Big Ten. I'm not speaking for Danny. Danny will say his thing. Danny, he's never short of words, but I don't want the ACC being the guinea pig. Let the SEC be the guinea pig. Let those goofballs in Alabama and Auburn, let those guys be the guinea pig. Don't make those kids that I like and I root for be the guinea pig. And I will lose money because there's no post-game show if there's no games, but I'd rather that than have what's going on in North Carolina.
North Carolina was disturbing when you started hearing reports that they didn't test students prior to their return to campus, which means you didn't catch kids that were already positive with the coronavirus before they came there. So you were just destined to have clusters of outbreaks where, you know, someone was going to have it at a sorority party or someone's going to be in a dorm. And, you know, we all know how dorms are, 40 kids on a floor, all sharing a bathroom. No amount of mask wearing is going to prevent it once you allow it in. Syracuse University is doing the total opposite, with requiring students, not just student athletes, students are required to get a COVID test in a 7 to 10 day window prior to their arrival on campus. And then they're getting checked in again at their check-in time, at arrival. So you're every
That's
day.
if they're in campus housing. If you live on an apartment on in a house on Sumner Avenue, you don't have to do that.
I think you're right. I think there is still one test they have to take, but you're right. But it's still a lot more than North Carolina is doing for its regular students. And this is the stuff that I think the Syracuse football players were hearing about when they wanted to sit out of practice a couple times last week, not so much because they were concerned about what was going on here on their campus. They were worried what other schools were doing, both for the student body at large and also for the other football programs. It really came out last week that Liberty University was really failing.
I'd like to punch in the nose, socially distant.
Liberty saying that they were testing their football players if they showed symptoms. When everybody in the free world understands that a college-age kid's walking around with coronavirus probably not showing symptoms, that especially for your football program, you have to test every single athlete to make sure you don't have an outbreak that's going to end up affecting coaches, staff, other athletic department personnel, because these football players, you can keep them in something of a bubble, but you're going to have other people around them. And I think that's where the Syracuse players were worried, and rightfully so. And I just don't see us in this country getting a unified approach to this thing at this point, because we've had 6 months to do it and we're not there yet.
We're not there, right.
And and we still got all these varied attitudes towards it, as you see from the Pac-12 to the SEC.
Mike, Seth and I were just talking about that exact issue a few minutes ago. I don't know if you heard that there isn't really like a clear-cut right answer, right? You can find doctor evidence for both sides. You can find anecdotal evidence for both sides. This works, that works. And so I think it's, the reason you have this kind of patchwork of approaches is, like I said, there isn't kind of one right answer. Young kids have a different maybe solution than old people, or, school age versus working people. And are you in an office, or indoors or outdoors? And, there's just so many complications. I think that's why, and I think it kind of almost has to be that way. Early when they tried to make a national thing, they go, why should South Dakota be the same as New York City? There's nothing similar about them. And, it is interesting that, Seth and I were just talking about how it's kind of interesting that of the 5 power conferences, they've evenly split essentially on which way to go. So you almost have this controlled study of, well, we can see how it works if you stay home and how it works if you play. And what do the kids do at stay home? Are they going to get exposed somewhere else or some other way? Or, what happens when you miss your senior season? Or, anyway, there's just so many complications that, it almost has to come down to a local decision, based on, your best guess with your circumstances.
And I agree, local's fine. And if we're fighting the virus and there's not an outbreak in Montana, they don't have to have the same rules that are set up in New Jersey or New York City. Right. But the problem that we have in athletics, college athletics, is these conferences have gotten so big. Syracuse now finds itself in the same conference as Clemson, and Florida State. And so, what's going on in South Carolina might be different than New York, but these kids are now going to be on the fields together.
Right.
And so you do have to come up with a solution and an approach that satisfies everybody in different areas of the country.
Exactly. Well, I guess what I'm saying is that like the ACC is its own ecosystem, right? Yeah. Different than the Big Ten.
Right. So but the ACC is not in 2 states. That's what
Mike's
I get it.
Saying. That's what I'm saying. So you got to come up with protocols that are consistent league wide, and do your best. Like I said, I'm not there. This is what makes it so complex. There isn't like a simple answer to this, right? And the cost of not playing is massive. And so it's not just as simple as, well, we just have to do it till nobody ever gets sick, because you have tens of thousands of people relying on these games that aren't going to get sick, and they're being put out of business, or they're being bankrupted or put out of their homes if they can't work or earn money. And the other sports that rely on football. I mean, it's like I said, it's just not as simple as we just have to make sure nobody ever gets sick. There's
Danny, I'm not saying this is an easy thing. What I'm suggesting is you have college kids on a college campus, and as much as they're saying they're following all these rules and testing and everything, people go downtown. I mean, they're not telling kids that have cars. Let's just use Syracuse as an example. And people who are watching outside of Syracuse, I'm just going there because Mike lives there, Danny went there, and I went there, and we love it there. And that's why we're talking about this. But you can insert the word North Carolina or Clemson or any of the schools that you're talking about. It's all the same. But the argument from my standpoint is they're not telling kids that have cars, you can't go downtown to Armory Square if you want. And you don't know who they're interacting with. And no one's telling them they can't do it. And these kids are 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and they don't always have the best judgment. And football, and Mike, if I'm saying anything that you're hearing differently, because I've read what you've written, and I know you're primarily the basketball guy, so you haven't done all the football stories, but you've been on top of all of this, and I see what you're tweeting, and that's why I reached out to you. But this idea that you can have it and not test positive for up to 10 days, that if it's in your nose and it's not big enough to show up on a test, you could be a carrier and no longer and test negative. So if you go into the field, the practice field, and you have it because you went to Armory Square that night and somebody gave it to you there, and suddenly now you're an offensive lineman and you're just doing everything in the world to touch and touch and touch and touch, and now you've spread it. And again, stop me if there's a way to prevent any of this. And this argument that everybody has been saying that, well, this is just the risk that has to be taken, because that's what Cameron Wolfe, the Duke doctor who advised John Swofford, said. Well, you can't go on a football field without some modicum of risk, which is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. Because, yes, you always have a risk that you're going to break your leg, but not that you're going to infect all your teammates. And I'm sorry, but that's what's driving me bananas. And I'm not saying I'm the expert. What I'm saying is no one has refuted me. And I want to tell me I'm wrong. But as long as that's the case, for Syracuse to put their kids at risk when they saw Michigan, and I'm sorry, Michigan makes more money than Syracuse, for Michigan to say no, but the greedy orange said yes, offends me. And that bothers me. And if the ACC canceled, but the SEC was going, it would still be a topic, but I wouldn't care as much.
So Seth, I will make one comment. I've played on teams. Guy comes in with the flu, half the team gets the flu. And so it's not like you don't have situations where guys come in with something. You send your kid to school. Well, it's closer to the flu than Ebola, right? So, everyone's making it out like it's Ebola and everyone's dropping dead. And again, we're just having a complete conversation here. So yeah, I totally get it. And that's why this conversation of risk versus reward gets so complicated, because the risk is what it is. And in many ways unknown because it's a relatively new thing. The penalty for not playing, the reward, right? Is more than just greed. I mean, it's real. What we found during the shutdown, that it's real people who can't make their mortgage payments or their rent payments. It's real people who can't feed their families, real businesses that go out, that go under after years and years and years of work to build it. This isn't just you're greedy because you want to go to the ball game. It's not that. And there's a huge price to pay. And the negative price for the people affected on the you don't play side is 100 times the price that you pay on the positive as far as numbers. Now we can debate, is it life or death? Is it, long-term disability? Is it,
Danny,
what's the price
Danny,
of getting
if your
COVID?
son was an offensive guard, if your son was an offensive guard, would you want him playing?
We'd know what to do.
But your son's an athlete. If your son was an offensive guard, knowing the culture of what college football is, would you want your son playing offensive guard for the Syracuse Orange this season?
The answer is yes. I would let him play, although I hope he wouldn't be an offensive guard anyway. He'd be a tight end. But
not the point.
But the point is the same. Yes, I would make sure he's healthy. I would make sure he's tested. I would check the protocols, make sure there's some play. If I don't agree with the protocols, no, I wouldn't let him play. But if they have a system in place, and again, that's the decision,
Mike,
that everyone has to make. It doesn't make you an idiot for choosing one side. It doesn't make you a scaredy cat for choosing the other side. Everyone's trying to make their best decision here in an environment where there isn't clear long-term information. So a lot of people are shooting in the dark here. It's just not like I said, there isn't a clear cut. This is the best way to do it.
Mike,
two things I think that worry me, especially one thing that gives me pause is we focus all on the athletes, especially the college athletes. And we have to remember there's other people around these kids that make these programs go. And I've talked to a lot of coaches who have let me in on conversations they're having with their wives. And the wives are saying, are you going to have to go in a bubble? Are you being safe when you go into the athletic facility, when you go into the complex? Because the wives don't know where the athletes have been over the weekend. And then their husbands are going in and into film rooms with them and into small rooms and onto the field. And, and so the wives, this thing can, it can conceivably spread beyond the court and beyond the field. And we have to be worried about those other populations. And then the other thing that worries me about is, as we've all agreed on, there's so much that we don't know about this virus. And yet, if you look at the conferences that don't make a ton of money on football, they've all said, we're done. And it's like, if you take the money out of it, right. The Ivy's done, the Patriots done, the MAC is done, everyone's done. And I get a little worried, and I understand the economic concerns that other, people's livelihoods are at stake. But when no one with money in the game is saying we'll play, it worries me that we're putting too much importance on fulfilling a TV contract and filling our coffers for one fall of football. And boy, I'd hate to be the guy making that call and be wrong.
Well, and just for the record, and Mike, again, tell me if I'm wrong, but I worried, and I brought your name up when the Big Ten canceled. And the rumor was the ACC was thinking about doing the same thing. And I said, I worry, and again, I'm just using these names, and I thought of you. If they said no basketball season, you could get furloughed. You could easily get furloughed. And
absolutely. You
saw what happened, Danny. As soon as the ACC tournament shut down, you and I got taken right off the radio. Right instantly. We were taken
in the middle of a break.
And that was a panic, but it happened right away. And this argument, this whole argument from that is, I worry about Matt Park. I worry about teachers that I worry about teachers that work there. I worry about the SID office. I worry about all those people, and I don't want to see people lose their jobs. I don't. When the Big Ten canceled, my immediate reaction was, "Oh my God, that's awful." Didn't mean it wasn't right. It's awful. And what I'm saying is, when I saw the North Carolina story, I got so scared. And I'm supposed to be there on the 27th. And Mike, you and I have talked about this for months now. I'm supposed to go up there on the 27th. And Onondaga County's done a wonderful job of handling this virus, But you bring in these kids from all over, from Arizona, from Texas, from Florida, from Colorado, from Massachusetts, from everywhere, and there's going to be a big melting pot, and these kids are not going to know they have it. They're not going to know because they're not going to test positive right away. It's not the instant you get it, you test positive. And they're co-ed by dorm in that building, in that campus. Co-ed by dorm. It was the greatest thing. It made me pick Syracuse over Northwestern. Co-ed by dorm. That means there's girls across the hall. There's girls to the left. There's girls to the right. It was the greatest thing in the world. And there's no social distancing going on that Mount Olympus. I don't care what anybody's saying. And it's just, that is so alarming. And, you know, Mike, you tweeted the story. I don't think you wrote the story, but you wrote the story. Somebody wrote the story about 14 days they had to quarantine. The kids had to with no air conditioning, yet they're all in a dorm. And no one said if it's a men's dorm or a women's dorm. And I guarantee you they're all doing each other. They're doing it. So if one guy has it, he's giving it to somebody else. And it's not an if, it's a when. And that is alarming. And to me, if you told me that the SEC is saying, you know, we'll go down with the ship and we're playing, I say, okay, I'll watch and I'll take an objective viewpoint, but not when it comes to these kids. First Mike, then Danny. What did you make of Jim Boeheim's comments when he went on? I think it was Sirius XM or one of their 700 channels that nobody listens to. That when Jim Boeheim went on Sirius XM and says nobody under 25 died from this. So what is everybody worried about? And I'm
First of all, yeah, normally Jim is very reasoned and reasonable about things like this. To say that nobody under the age of 25 has died from it is obviously patently wrong. So, you know, let's please not go there with this debate. I know the basketball coaches feel like with more time that they have a chance and a much better chance than football of being able to play. They work with smaller rosters. Many leagues, it's bus trips only. Other leagues like the ACC, Syracuse, they're on chartered aircraft. They don't go through an airport. They don't get on commercial flights. They can stay in a virtual bubble. And there's a lot of coaches that are already looking ahead and saying, if we have to push back the start of the season from November 10th to the weekend after Thanksgiving, when many colleges at that point have already said the students will not return to campus after Thanksgiving break. They're going to go, instead of returning, they're going to stay home. They'll have their last week or two of the fall semester online and then take their finals. The basketball players can be in a virtual bubble on their campuses at that point. And it's not a situation like in the fall with football, like if students were all sent home and the football players remain, where that's, you know, kind of like you force the students off the campus. At this point, basically everyone's gone. It's from Thanksgiving until the second week of January. You've got an opportunity to play a lot of games. You could even move conference games into that window. And again, you buy yourself even more time for the nation to get this virus under control. And you just give yourself a chance. I think a lot of basketball coaches are really, you know, putting a lot of stock in this idea and this theory. And I think it was first put out there by Seton Hall coach Kevin Willard, that let's start playing right after Thanksgiving. And because the bubble has been proven to work by both the NHL and the NBA.
Agreed.
It's just not as easy to put college kids in a bubble, especially football players. And, you know, then how do you work it on a campus for basketball? But
basketball makes a little bit more sense because
you have a chance.
It's more manageable.
Yes.
You would think.
You have a chance. And then I've seen other coaches say, well, then after second week of January, let's move a conference into a bubble. Again, if students are going to be taking courses online, who cares whether the Syracuse players are in Syracuse or whether they're in a bubble in Greensboro, North Carolina with every other ACC team?
Or Montana or Maine or Nebraska.
Wherever you want to go, baby. Wherever we can play basketball. And
Disney World's open.
If they'll let me in, I'll cover it.
No, the NBA will have left. So let's go. And
I'm
they
there.
can do the NCAA tournament like that because let's face it, after one weekend, it divides in half, which is the NBA model, and the NHL for that matter, is every 10 days, the whole risk divides in half because it's playoffs. They're not talking about that for a regular season.
It's impossible for the regular season. Again, the tournament absolutely could do it. The basketball tournament this past summer proved that it was done. They showed what a bubble could do. Yeah, they proved what a bubble could do before the NBA even started. So, yeah, bubbles work. Can you create a lot of mini bubbles around the country for basketball to work? It might be able. You might be able to. You might have to
get to work on it. Like, not you, but like you've had 6 months. Like, get to work on this. Jay Mariotti was on this show a week ago, and we talked about a fictional NFL bubble. And I said divide it into quadrants. That's where I got Montana from. I said Montana, Nebraska, Idaho, and Maine. Those are my 4 quadrants for the NFL. And he goes, well, that would take months to set up. I go, what have you had? You've had months. So I hope that for basketball, they have a team designated to, don't worry about this football nonsense. Come up with a plan.
I hear you. And
don't let Jim Boeheim make any of the decisions.
How much football the NCAA doesn't run football. It's been, shown over the past couple of weeks. The conferences all do whatever they want. They run the championship. The NCAA does not for football. Basketball, the NCAA runs that tournament. Dan Gavitt, the senior VP for basketball at the NCAA, has so much more power in his sport than anybody does for football. I think all of that gives basketball a chance, a fighting chance to actually devise a plan and have everybody get on board.
Pete Thamel, who Syracuse guy. Do I say his name right? Is that
no.
how you say?
Thamel,
tomato, whatever.
Pete Thamel. He's awesome. He's fantastic.
I like him. I know him. I just when you talk to somebody, unless you're introducing them to a radio show, why would I call anybody by a name? I used to root for a guy that had a symbol for a name. And you never said, hey, you, get over here. Like, you never did that. He said that the ACC had a meeting and there's no news because they're still planning forward. Do you think, and this is just a prediction, not should, do you think the ACC changes their mind between now and September 12th?
That's tough. No, I think they're going to try to give this a shot. It's going to look a little bit odd, and you're going to get into the issue of, are these student athletes actually student athletes, or are they employees? And we need to talk about name, image, and likeness and stuff. If you're making the football players play while you're sending the rest of the student body home, and I've already seen today a whole bunch of college athletes or former college athletes, North Carolina basketball players, Armando Bacot and Garrison Brooks, have both sent out tweets kind of going, employees? So, you're going to have to. If you're
sending all the students in North Carolina home and you keep those kids, the football players up there, that's kidnapping.
Except, it depends on what they have for opt-out options, right? If they can opt out, get another year of eligibility.
But if you're saying the student body can't be on this campus, but you can, he's being singled out.
You're actually making them safer because you're getting rid of a lot of the problems with the 20,000 kids going to frat parties.
That's fair. Danny said that.
And now you're in a bubble again. But you will have to cross that bridge into name, image, and likeness land.
Yeah.
If you're a university president.
Well, and again, if the players aren't playing, what are they doing? Are they safer not playing? Okay, they're not banging into each other, but does that mean they're going to not go to parties and not date and not go to bars and not, it's it's again not as black and white as, well, if they're playing, it's dangerous. If they're not playing, it's safe.
Right.
And again, that's why there's so many gray areas depending, every issue. There isn't, like I said, there isn't a clear cut. A versus B. It's like sliding. It's all sliding scale of, how many protections can you put in? How many ways can you control their behavior? How many ways can you isolate them from here? How many ways can you test them versus you don't play? How can you do all those things? If you don't play, how many people go broke? How many people of other sports don't get funded? I think it was one of the Pac-12 schools already canceled. I forget if it was UCLA or one of those, already canceled like 10 sports. What about their their scholarships are being honored, but they don't, for most athletes, the vast 90+%, this is the farthest they're going. This is it. They don't get that back. And like I said, I'm not saying what the answer is. I'm just saying that we really have to be clear that there's a real cost and benefit here, and who's really in charge of doing that calculus. In football, it's the conferences. For the players, their ultimate safety is to have the control of saying, do I have an opt-out option like the pros do? And, because clearly the guy who runs the bar on campus doesn't have an opt-out option. He's got to run his business and show up every day. And I don't think he has 2 years worth of cash flow sitting in his pocket that he can say, I'll just shut down for 2 years or a year, or whatever it is. And, so it's, like I said, incredibly complicated. And that's why you're seeing so much of kind of these 50-50 decisions, why it is so polarized, because there just isn't, it's not greed versus safety. It's just not that simple. And like as you said, Seth, I'm glad I'm not the guy making the decision.
Mike, we appreciate your time like 100-fold. Have you enjoyed, last question, have you enjoyed the plethora of sports that are suddenly now on your television? Because there's like 7,000 games on. And the reason I'm asking that, and I said this to the audience, when I watch an NHL playoff game, which the NHL playoffs have been out of this world, and last night watching the NBA playoffs for the first time, I got that feel as well, that those are literally hours that I can spend not thinking about COVID-19. Like, I don't think about it. Yet, when I watch a baseball game, that is literally all I think about. Like, I think about that guy's not doing this right, and this guy's an idiot, and no one's sitting behind the dugout. They're all sitting in the dugout. And I find myself not watching baseball because the other sports are out there. And this was my whole argument about shutting the baseball season down, because I thought baseball had bigger problems. They have a collective bargaining agreement that expires, and they need to work on that. And they're not, because they're doing this hodgepodge nonsense, and they're going to cry poverty, and it's going to get worse. And if you think people were mad when there were no sports, imagine next summer when there's no baseball and we're allowing fans in stands and they're out because of a strike. You think there's venom now? Just watch. And the baseball thing's hodgepodge, but have you been receiving the joy that sports were supposed to bring, that during the whole pandemic when everybody was dying for something to watch, and now your cup runneth over?
At first when sports started coming back on, I felt a little guilty almost to enjoy them, that I knew there were still, large segments of the country that were, being hit hard by the pandemic, and people were still feeling this both physically, medically, and economically. And I would feel a little guilty, but I got to tell you, yesterday when the NBA playoffs started, and I think the first game tipped off at about 1:00, and I felt like it was like the first day of the NCAA tournament.
It feels
when
like
the game
that, right?
started at noon, and I was so pumped up. And I'm a college basketball guy. I'll watch the NBA a little bit, but I was raised on college campuses my entire youth.
Of course.
So I've always gravitated to the college game. But yesterday, yes, I was into those NBA playoffs games. I have watched more hockey than I ever would have before.
The hockey playoffs have been so good.
When the conversation rolls around the college football, and then obviously I start to have some hesitancy or trepidation about it, it's only because after seeing these other sports and my love for them starts to churn, that I just hope we don't go back too fast or make a mistake here this fall that screws things up for us college basketball fans in the winter. I'm like, listen, if we have to shut down football, or if we just have to be careful, whatever we have to do so that I'm getting to watch college basketball this winter, that's what I'll do. Now, if they can make it happen and basketball can learn, fine. But yes, short answer to your question, I've had a lot of fun watching sports as they've come back sort of online, in their bubbles. And yeah, to see guys, just to keep it Syracuse oriented here, to see guys like Carmelo Anthony.
Yeah.
playing for the Trailblazers, and they make it into the playoffs, and Jeremy Grant's playing great for the Nuggets, and Dion Waiters has a role with the Lakers.
It's crazy.
It is. It's fun. It's crazy, but I would just, I just hope we can keep this going, and that's why, I'm like, okay, let's proceed, but let's proceed with an abundance of caution.
Mike, I appreciate this. Thank you for doing this, and just stay safe. And I'm gonna hit you up when I come up there because I've seen pictures of teachers wearing face shields and masks. And if that's the case, I'm wearing sunglasses because if I'm going to look like a stormtrooper, I'm going full on.
All right, so now we know Seth will be one of the one walking around campus in a stormtrooper outfit. It's been good talking to you guys. Seth, Danny Schayes, one of the best lacrosse players in Janesville DeWitt High School history.
There you go.
I wouldn't go quite that far, but but I had my moments.
The biggest?
I had my moments.
The biggest lacrosse player in Janesville DeWitt.
I'll give you that one. I was tough
shot.
to stop, that's for sure.
By an absolute long shot. We'll see you, Mike.
All right, fellas. Good to see you.
Thanks, Mike.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now watch this, folks. This is how Mike's going to go, and that's very nice, and we appreciate that. And now watch this. Just like that, we are back to this screen. How about that? How great is that? Jim says maybe go full hazmat suit. How is it college basketball is suggesting bubbles to play, but yet football can't do the same thing? I just think it's a volume. Correct me if I'm wrong. I just think you could do it for basketball. I think you could do it for basketball, and I would think you could do it for women's basketball. But the cost, basically you'd have to double the cost because you would double the amount of people, and you'd have to have two separate bubbles, but basketball seems doable. Football just seems like too much, just way too much.
Well, the roster for football is what 7 or 8 times 100 plus compared to 12 to 15 depending on number of walk-ons. Plus the equipment logistics, cleaning out all the equipment all the time. It's not just throwing uniforms in the washer, right? I don't see linemen running over to the sideline getting hand gel, between every series. So there is a lot more to it. And again, it's a tough thing. Now the question is, as you go through the season, since football generates so much more revenue, there's also the cost of not having it is that much higher. You're talking about it, in the big picture for some of these major conferences. So. It is complicated. I don't know that football works as well, like you said, in a bubble because the games themselves are so impacted. Playing football without fans, which is the bigger missing? No fans at a basketball game or no fans at a football game. Tough to figure that one out as well.
You could offset costs. Jim has a good suggestion. You could offset costs and trim the roster down to 65. You could. You could. Again, my thing is, one day we saw North Carolina, and everything scared me with North Carolina, and it just seems like it's going to be the exact same. And if it's the same thing, and I just don't want it in my school, I don't want it. And I understand the money. I'm not discounting the money, but I don't know how you do it. I don't know how the NFL does it. I told you that off the air when I talked to you yesterday. I don't know how the NFL is doing it. I'm not sure. And I think the NFL, this is what I did this morning. And I just want to add this. So I cover the Jets for Sports Illustrated. And so what that entails is I sit in this exact seat and I watch these Zooms. And I saw the coach and I saw 3 or 4 players and 2 assistant coaches. Like, we were on Zoom for like hours. And my argument has been they're going to go to the stadium. Listen to this. They're going to go to the stadium and they're going to do a scrimmage. And because of a bunch of injuries, they don't know the date. And I think the non-preseason games is one of the dumbest decisions they have made, because what they need to practice on field, there is so much to practice.
Right.
And to put a team together and not have them scrimmage against someone else is not fair to them. And it's a huge mistake. But also, I think they need to practice travel. I think they need to practice. What are you doing? How are you doing this? Are you going early so that everybody gets there and isolates? Or are you going the day of? Are you going to make that decision depending on your distance? Like, for example, the Bears playing the Green Bay Packers, they're going to go maybe the night before or maybe day of. I don't know. I don't know. My point being is that they're not prepared, and I don't know how they're doing this. And every player is coming and going as they wish, and it seems like everything's fine. It seems like everything's fine in the NFL. And I don't know how they're doing it, and I don't know. But I'm not saying the NFL can't go, because the NFL is like baseball. If you're dumb enough to try this, go for it. Go for it. I mean, you want to talk about the Cleveland Indians? They're ridiculous. The game with the Cincinnati Reds today was canceled. They're going to try to play a doubleheader tomorrow. They try. But now you're talking about 4 or 5 games there. The Marlins lost 18 games. And, I mean, it compromises your competition. And if that Marlins thing, I mean, the Cardinals are a pretty big franchise to be out. They have to play 50 games in 40 days. I mean, so their competition's compromised. I don't know how the NFL's doing this. I do not know. But my argument is college and pro are so different. And I think all of your analysis makes sense for pro. It makes sense for the NFL. I don't see it the same way for college, because these kids, you've given them these scholarships, and it's like you own them. And I hate that phrase, but that's what it feels like. And yeah, you could opt out, but what does it do to your future? And you said it yourself. So the pressure on these kids just to do it so that they finish. And these guys are not going to the pros. None of these guys are going to the pros. I just think that's unfair.
Well, in some ways, yeah, in some ways it almost makes the college game, you talk about the different pressures, right? In some ways, the college game even has more pressure to play because most of the players aren't going anywhere, because, there's such a thing. Now, here's the thing with football that's way different than, basketball and certainly baseball, the exact thing you mentioned, the jamming in of games for baseball. Football plays once a week, whatever, 3 times a month. I don't know if they're going to still do the buys kind of thing.
It's not really. It's a condensed season. I think you have 1 bye week.
Yeah. So they play 1 game a week, which, allows a whole different testing protocol as far as before the game, right? Before you get on that plane, boom, everybody gets tested. They've got 2 days to figure it out. So from that standpoint, it actually works for the players. And for the, however you want to call the, the bubble or whatever they're going to, play in, because the games are so spread out. You don't have like the situation of baseball, 2 guys get sick. Well, a day before, where you're screwed because you can't replace them, and then that impacts 5 games in a row. And so in some ways, the football schedule kind of naturally lends itself, to this kind of protocol. Again, another of these complicating gray area issues, that make football in some ways easier to manage from a testing standpoint. As Mike talked about, they travel charter. You don't have to go into airports. So all these factors, all are, plus here, a minus there, a complication here. It's, again, when you add it all up, they're all so different, number one, but all have, so many different gray pluses and minuses, really hard to make a clear decision. At some point you do the best you can and you put it out there, and the players themselves say they want to play. Again, how much is that because their careers are short? Most of them aren't going pro, or if the ones that are going pro have to, get seen for the draft. You see in basketball right now, the kids who played last year with no NCAA tournament, with no summer leagues, with no, the draft being pushed back, they're working out on their own for 8 months before the draft, and who knows where they're going to end up. So. Again, all these things just kind of get in the way. There's no real way to say, is it helping this guy, hurting that guy? It's, it's a real crapshoot.
I don't know. And I said, I've said this before. When I watch the NBA or the NHL, and more the NHL, I've said this before, I think the NHL wins the return award. They came back the best. From the change in their venues, because their original venues were Columbus or Pittsburgh and Vegas, and they said, nope, you're out of control. You can't be trusted. And Gary Bettman, who I've known Gary Bettman for 15 years, and I don't think I've ever talked politics with him, but I could have sworn he's a Republican. And not that makes a difference, but I could have sworn, and he basically, without saying it, said a big old F you to America and said, you guys can't be trusted. I'm going to Canada. And the bubbles look gorgeous. I mean, and the arena presentation looks incredible. And what they've done is these custom-made tarps over the stands. And I'm not saying that they look, I'm not saying I want that permanent. I'd rather have fans, but it looks like it belongs. It doesn't look like a fish out of water, like, what the hell is that? It doesn't look like teddy bears in left field in Oakland or some of the other goofball things, you know. And again, I don't mind the cartoon fans and the cardboard fans, and I don't care if you want to put your dogs out there, and all those things are fine. Honestly, all those things are fine. My argument has been, if you can put me in a position where I know that everybody tested is clear and no one's going out of that isolation. Like, Danny, I don't know if you heard this. If you are caught out of the bubble, your team loses a draft pick. Like, they don't screw around. Like, that is hardcore. And I love it because when the game starts, I don't think about where are the announcers. I don't think about who's not in. What I wish is they could put more signage on the ice for the home team, and I want that for the NBA too, and I've told you that. I want to discern, you know, who's the home team, but at least in hockey, they got rid of third jerseys. So, the team that's in dark is the home team, and you kind of see that. And when the puck is in the ends, you don't even know that they're in a bubble. You're not even reminded. I think the show has been, the presentation has been brilliant. And what the NHL did that I like better than the NBA, and the NBA couldn't do this because of competition, and I want to ask you about that, because the NBA had no choice but to extend its regular season, and if you were in striking distance of the playoffs, you were invited to the bubble.
Right.
The Washington Wizards were never going to make it. Like, they were never going to make it. But you played regular season games, and in my argument, and I've said this to you on the radio, is the NBA does not value its regular season because most of it was pretty decided. Not all of it. Phoenix was definitely not. But my problem is that when Milwaukee's playing Brooklyn and there's nothing to play for, Giannis took the game off. And I didn't mind it. I'm not picking on Giannis, and I don't mind when LeBron sits. I'm not having that argument. But in hockey, you went immediately into playoffs. You had 9, 10, 11, 12 play 5, 6, 7, 8 in a best of 5. And from the first second you dropped the puck, they were fighting like it's the playoffs. And it's been amazing. And the intensity, and they don't care because everything's the playoffs. So now I'll say that I'll give the NBA a fairer shot now, even though Atan and I went through all the first-round matchups, and there's like maybe one that we don't know who's going to win.
Yeah.
And I hate that.
Well, I think the other part with coming back is that they're essentially the end of the regular season was kind of like preseason, right? Everyone had to get back in shape, get their teams put together. Some guys, they ended the season with a guy injured who all of a sudden, because they had 3 extra months, he's not injured anymore. And so I don't mind that they had that kind of, the last 10 games of the season thing to get ready for the playoffs. And I thought that, kind of the play-in thing, gave it a different element. So I can absolutely see both areas. One conference was less, up in the air than the other, right? West had more teams that were close, so they ended up with, more teams in the bubble. So, so I don't mind that part of it. Probably the only issue I have with the NBA is, as you talk about the presentation, it looks more like Summer League than NBA arenas. And to me, that's kind of the only issue. Clearly, they have to do it this way. But as you mentioned, you can identify the courts better. You can, make the home teams in white. Because now
they've
they've
been
mixed it
switching
up
the
so
jerseys, and I hate that.
much. Can't tell by looking at the jerseys who's the home team anymore.
Yeah.
And I guess if every game's on a neutral court, does it? I mean, the home team is just a name only.
But that's the point. Is that if you superimpose a logo on the side of the court, so do it in the middle. Take that NBA logo out and put the Milwaukee Bucks or the Phoenix Suns, whoever the home team is, put them in there and just make it and say, can you do me a favor for the next 3 months? Home teams wear white and the road teams wear dark, and just pretend. And I don't mind the thing with the names, and if you want to go there, we can go there, and that doesn't bother me. What bothers me is I don't know who the home team is, and I don't know if I care about that game. And that game has not been that game has not, like, it's just such, the competitive balance in the NBA is the worst. It's the worst in sports.
Well, the performances have been spectacular. I mean, you've seen players come back and just have massive games. I'm surprised how many overtime games there are. How many games are going down to 1 point. It seems like every game is an overtime. I mean, it's it's been remarkable that way. I think the level of competition, the energy and the effort, has been spectacular. It seems, like I said, they're almost like playing the opening of the All-Star game where they it's all show and production, and and then a game breaks out. But like I said, I can't fault at all the the players and the effort and the competition and the performances that these guys are putting out. I mean, that's been terrific. And there's the other stuff, right? There's the social justice element of it that you pick your side. Is it too much? Is it not enough? Is it misplaced? Whatever. So you can totally separate conversation. But I've been very pleased with the level of performance, and I think that's what really makes it a compelling TV. It's almost as Mike talked about, it was almost like Christmas Day where you have a quadruple header of games the other day. And ironically, on a Monday, that's not Martin Luther King Day, right? So
right. It's wild. Games are on constantly, and it's great, and it's been good. I think the announcers who are not there, I don't think I don't feel like It hasn't bothered me. It really hasn't. It doesn't bother me in the slightest. I've enjoyed it. Like I said, make the NBA games count a little more. That's
so
all.
Let me ask you, and I totally get that. The regular season is what it is, and the only solution is to expand the playoffs, right? Bring more teams in it, which I don't think that's.
No, I don't want that. I just want more good teams.
Yeah.
Because in the NHL, if you're playing the 3-6 matchup, both those teams think they can win the Stanley Cup.
Well, the NHL, I mean, what's different about it is that it's, the scoring is so, I don't want to say random, but each goal is so magnified, and each goal can change the entire outcome, and so many of them happen just on happening, right?
Well, and a hot goalie can steal a game, and it can steal a series. But the difference there is the 9, 10, 11, 12 teams that were in that round, that play-in round or whatever they called it, honestly, I'm being completely honest, those teams are most of them are good. And my team, which I didn't think was awful, I'm being honest, my team, the New Jersey Devils, they're not awful. They missed the bubble by 2 points. They lost to Pittsburgh the day before Rudy Gobert tested positive, and they didn't know that was a pivotal loss. They didn't know.
So let me ask you this question, and these are all the things that come out of it, right? So in the real world, everybody's staying home doing Zoom meetings instead of traveling around and being on site. What if you find out that that's better? Why do I want to leave my house? I can do all this from home. I don't have to go into the office. Right? What if you find out that announcers don't really have to be at the game?
I see that coming.
The reporters can stay at home and they put the guy up on stage with a camera and he does.
Well, but the journalist's job has gotten harder, because if I want to talk about something with a player, I can go up to said player and say, hey, you got 2 seconds, and we can talk privately. And now if we want a one-on-one for SI, I have to send a formal request, and a separate Zoom link has to be created. Right. And that's a pain in the ass. So that's
that part
not
is
the
for
same.
Sure.
That's not the same.
Again, the cost benefit of,
correct.
traveling.
What
to
I don't
80 games.
understand is the baseball. They are making all the players and managers do Zoom. Why are these guys there? And some TV reporter, this guy Otis, he came over to me and he on Zoom, and he said, have you been to a baseball game yet? And I have the credential for him. I haven't. And they said, well, why not? I said, what am I going there for? What do I need to see? I don't know. I don't see the value in that. If you're telling me that I can get a one-on-one with Don Mattingly, I'm there, but I can't.
Yeah,
and if the Marlins are going to set me up with Don Mattingly for 10 minutes for my podcast, I can do that from here.
That's the point. So, what happens when all these
that's
things...
what I'm saying. That element has been taken away, and the journalist, and I don't know if you've noticed this, but there's a lot less breaking stories.
Well,
You're not hearing about players bitching as much, especially in the NBA where the players talk all the time.
Right.
Like they're, Wojciechowski and Shams Charania and those guys, like they're relying on texts because they've had years of building that up. Nobody else can. Nobody else can. I understand where you're going. In certain aspects, yes. I think the movie industry is going to be forever changed. I don't know what movie is coming out that I need to be in a movie theater for. And the only movie I can think of is Wonder Woman 1984 because I'm dying to see that movie. But if you told me it's on demand, and I don't know if you saw what's the movie, the $30 movie? Oh, Mulan. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Mulan, they're saying you have to have Disney Plus, which we have, but you have to pay $30 on top. And that's not worth it to me. Not if I could wait 6 weeks and I'll see it on Disney Plus regular.
Yeah, is there other stuff to watch? Right? I mean, it's
plenty. I can't get through everything.
Right.
Linda Carter. Jim writes, Linda Carter. Linda Carter follows me on Twitter. I don't know why. I don't know why, but I got a form. You know how you get an alert when somebody follows you on Twitter, and it said Linda Carter, and it had the little verified, and I went, Linda Carter, Wonder Woman. You want to hear a great Linda Carter story?
Sure, and I hope you tweeted her and said, hey, thanks for following. I'm a big fan.
I did. I said, thank you so much. And I want to get her on the Hall of Justice podcast. And it's not happening. She hasn't said yes to that. Linda Carter, the first season of the Wonder Woman TV show, they set it in World War II.
Okay.
Then they said that's too expensive. So they brought her to the present day, which was 1977, right? And what they wrote in the storyline was that Diana went to the island, and she stayed on the island. She doesn't age, and she comes in, and now she's in 1977. And Lyle Wagner, who had just passed away, and I heard this story years ago, but it was retold when he died. Lyle Wagner was under contract, and he played Steve Trevor, who Chris Pine plays in the movie. And Steve Trevor is the love interest of Diana Prince. So they wrote it that since World War II was in the 40s, and this is in the 1970s, this can't be Steve Trevor. This is Steve Trevor's son. And Linda Carter said two things in the interview that I still can't get over. Number one, she said they went out of their way to take any romantic notion between her and Steve out because it's the son and that's icky. Right? And then later in the documentary, she was asked about all the teenage boys that had her poster in that outfit on their walls. And she didn't like that. She doesn't want to know.
She liked the question or didn't like that the poster?
She doesn't like that men were, She didn't like that. And I just said, what? And Carrie Fisher was really funny because the late Carrie Fisher, she's been asked that for years. The Princess Leia and the bikini there.
Yeah.
And she's been asked that. And she said that her greatest thrill, she goes to Comic-Cons and people will go, I loved you when I was a kid. I loved you 3 or 4 times a day.
Yeah.
And like, that's a great line, and that's funny. And Linda Carter was very, very conservative. And I'm not judging her, but she didn't like that she was in that outfit, and she didn't like that men thought that was amazing.
That was kind of the point.
Right?
Very interesting.
So anyway, that's my Linda Carter story. That's all I got.
Well, she lives here in Phoenix, So next time you come out to visit, well, we go, maybe we can have lunch.
Yeah. Andrew says, Steve Trevor's son in the present day. Yes, Steve Trevor's son in the present day. And my theory is that's how Chris Pine is in Wonder Woman 1984. Because if you saw the first Wonder Woman movie, Chris Pine dies. And he dies, and it's a comic book, so if he dies, you must stay dead, because that happens.
Could be a clone, right? I thought a clone would make more sense.
I've heard all the theory. We did a podcast, a really fun podcast called "How the Hell is Chris Pine in Wonder Woman 1984?" And we did and we had all these. We read all the theories. We went online and we surfed out all the theories. So that movie I want to see, and if that movie was $30, I'd pay $30. But I don't know if I want to go to a movie theater. Would you? Not to see Wonder Woman 84. Like, if there was a movie you needed to see, would you go?
Yeah, I'd go, and I'd sit in the back row away from people, so that I'm breathing on them, not the other way around. Wear a mask, and yeah, I think you can handle it safely.
Yeah, I don't know. Like the Trolls movie, and my kids are a little older than Trolls, so that didn't really resonate with them. But we didn't have any interest in that. I mean, there's some great content that just is out. If I can read, my Netflix timeline and my Hulu and Amazon Prime, and I mean, there's countless amazing shows going on. And even though production has stopped, it has. There's such a plethora of stuff still out there, but there's going to come a time when they run out of stuff, unless they start filming things soon. I don't know how they're doing that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, reality is there a time that they're going to run out of stuff? I mean, there's how many tens of thousands of movies are already produced? How many zillions of TV shows you've never seen that you might say, maybe I'll watch MASH. I never did see Cheers. I never got into Cheers. Whatever.
Right. Oh, I totally recommend it. My wife watched Gilmore Girls. I never seen that, but I like Carole King, and she does the theme song. And I heard the theme song 7 times a day because it was always on.
I've only seen the first 3 seasons of The Walking Dead. Are they still doing it?
Etan's watching that now. He's with his children.
Right.
His older children, not his baby. But
yeah.
The Walking Dead. He's been watching The Walking Dead. I suggested to my wife Mad Men. I loved Mad Men. I thought that was great.
My son's a high school senior, and we're talking about all these 80s movies he never saw.
He never saw The Breakfast Club.
Some of the silly ones,
Candles.
Porky's, or some of that, Animal House, and but just some of these old action movies that you never saw. Some of the old Schwarzenegger movies, or Rambo, or and. So yeah, I mean, there's still plenty to catch up on before I'm waiting for Mission Impossible 7 to come out. Although the new Top Gun, the Maverick one.
Yeah, that looks good.
That one I'd go see.
Yeah. Okay. Andrew says, I failed to complete my thought. In the first Wonder Woman, we saw the plane explode, but we never saw Steve Trevor's body. In fiction, there's no body. Anything's possible. Correct. There's been thoughts that the Chris Pine in the sequel is actually the Martian Manhunter. I am going right over Danny's head. I can feel that. What's it called? There's a theory. So the theory that it's a shapeshifter and he's pretending to be Chris Pine. My theory, because Patty Jenkins, the director, did a lot of homages to Linda Carter, and she did a lot of homages to the first Superman movie. There's a scene in the first Wonder Woman movie, a brilliant scene that is literally a carbon copy of the scene when Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder are in that alley and they get mugged. And there's a scene where the guy pulls a gun and he reaches out his hand to catch the bullet, and she reaches out because she has the bracelet. and it's literally frame by frame. It's an homage, and it's beautiful. And it doesn't change the plot. It doesn't make it any less hip, and not everybody got that, but comic book fans, like, I got it in a second. Like when they're walking and she's got the fedora hat on, and I said, "Oh my God, that's the alley." It's the same thing, and I don't see that. There's all kinds of theories on where she's coming, and like I said, we did a whole podcast on the theories. But my theory is, since she loved Linda Carter so much, the Wonder Woman movie takes place in World War I, not World War II, and it couldn't be his son, but it could be the grandson. Could Chris Pine be the grandson? And the trailer kind of kiboshes that, because the trailer, he's like, Diana, that's a garbage can. And like, she doesn't know what a garbage can is. And like, why would, I don't know. It makes it sound like they know each other. So it's him. And I don't know how.
Funny.
So
time will tell. Then we shall see.
We'll see. And I don't know. As far as baseball is concerned, there's one thing that happened yesterday that I don't know what people are complaining about. I don't know why this is a big deal, but it's fun. And a lot of people wrote on social media that said they woke up and this was trending on their timelines, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. And it's the Fernando Tatis last night. And Fernando Tatis of the Padres had this massive lead. I think it was 7-0 or something like that. I saw the highlight. I didn't see it live because we had the convention, which I want to ask you about the conventions, because talk about getting overshadowed by sports. Oh, my God. Right. But the conventions are going on, and you had the hockey playoffs, and I was watching the basketball. I'm not watching Padres Rangers. But Fernando Tatis is at the plate, and they fall behind 3-0, and they gave Tatis
I think they're up 10-3 at this point. Or
10-2 or 10-3.
10-3 or 10-4 at this point.
It was a big lead. It was a 7 or 8 run lead. And he gets a green light, 3-0, and he hits a grand slam. And the Rangers got mad that he was swinging 3-0, and that's considered an unwritten rule in baseball. And Tatis doesn't know, and he got a take sign. I guess he didn't see it, and he's like,
didn't see it.
Well, he claims he didn't see it. I think he saw it and said, "Screw that." I don't know. I didn't have a problem with it, but everyone's coming to Tatis's defense, and I just think it's not etiquette. It wasn't rubbing it in. The Texas Rangers didn't lose worse because Fernando Tatis hit a grand slam, and you know what? Fans got a kick out of it and let him.
I lost your mic.
You did?
Oh, you're back. Okay.
For
Unless
real?
you're just moving your lips. It's funny, these unwritten rules is, so interesting because, baseball, you got a 21-year-old kid juiced up, having a great game, already hit a homer, just focusing, he knows he's got a 3-0, 3-0 fastball coming, something right down the middle, tees it up. And, you remember when Bryce Harper came out, he was all brash, and they were saying, "Oh, he's violating every rule because he's exciting and he gives interviews and he wants the game to be fun and recognizable." And so pitchers were beaning him all the time, and because he was Bryce Harper. And there's similar things in all sports, right? You take a knee on the 5-yard line at the last play of the game when you're up by 3 touchdowns. Instead of going for the route. In basketball, you don't dunk on somebody with 10 seconds to go and you're up 20. You run the clock out. So it's really interesting. I get it. The kid's juiced up. Gets a meatball thrown at him and he drills it. So
it doesn't bother me.
Yeah, it doesn't. That doesn't bother me at all. Or Bryce Harper. I'm on the Bryce Harper side. I want baseball players to be more flamboyant, like you see in basketball, more fan exciting. Get to know them better. Get out there and you look at football, usually the scrubs are in when you're up 4 touchdowns. It's my only chance to score the whole season. I'm on the 2-yard line. Do I run it in? Yeah. It's, so some of these unwritten rules, let them be pissed.
Well, it was funny because people were saying on Twitter, like, "Oh, this just feels normal to be having this debate rather than, should college football kids put their lives at risk? Like it's just an easier debate to have, and it reminds me of a time right after 9/11. I would say 5 days after 9/11.
Yep.
Major League Baseball, when they shut down, when they came back, the Yankees and Mets were both put on the road because Shea Stadium at the time was being used as a triage center.
Right.
And so the Mets, so even though we lived in the Yankees, we're in the, even though we lived in New York, we drove down, I was at MLB, and I drove down to Philadelphia, to the old vet. And I was in Philadelphia, and, we went there. And Charlie Steiner, who's now the voice of the Dodgers, great guy.
Okay.
Charlie Steiner came over and said, this was not on the air. He said, can I ask you a sports question? And I hadn't thought about sports because this was 9/11. Like it was crazy time. And I went to the situation with Charlie, and we took a walk, and we're in the press area of Veterans Stadium, and the Phillies were playing the Diamondbacks. Well, no, I don't even think they were playing the Diamondbacks, but the Diamondbacks were in first place. Remember, they won the World Series that year.
Right.
And he says to me, I don't want to sound callous, so understand the context in which I'm saying this. Like, I'm not losing sight of what America's in the midst of. And I said, don't worry, just say what you're going to say. He's like, Randy Johnson and Curt Schilling started the last two games before 9/11, and they're going to start the first two games back from 9/11. That's really not fair, is it? And he goes, I'm not going to bring it up on the air because it sounds really callous, but isn't that a real thing? And I said, you know what? You're right. I said, I don't know. You couldn't make that rule. There's no way they could tell him. But Bob Brenly, who was the manager of the Diamondbacks, was probably saying, screw it. I'm going to start my aces again.
Well, they've had 4 days rest.
Exactly.
I mean, why wouldn't you?
Yep. Exactly.
Exactly.
And it just reminds me of that. Like, if people are mad about Fernando Tatis, and no, he's not supposed to strike out. Jim writes, is Tatis supposed to just make an out? Aren't contracts based on productive stats? It's not even that. It's if 3-0, you're supposed to take. Make the guy throw a strike, and you're supposed to take. And if he can't find the plate, you get a free pass.
Or 3-0, you're getting a strike.
Swing away.
Like tee it up because the bases are loaded.
Right. But sometimes they don't always. A lot of times, in the way I was taught baseball, in a close game, depending on who the hitter is, if the hitter's not Fernando Tatis Jr.,
right,
you say 3-0, take.
Absolutely.
Because that would be the play to make. In this circumstance, it's an 8-run lead, and they told him to take, but he didn't look or he didn't see, and he doesn't care, and I don't mind it, and it doesn't bother me, and it's fine.
And he's leading the league in home runs, so it's a big bigger deal.
Right.
For him, 21 years old.
Yeah, and he's fine. So I said that, but I like that they're all fighting that. Okay, you want to fight something stupid and frivolous like this? That's fine.
Well, at least we're talking about the game, not all the stuff around the game. My
favorite line, and it's like I can retell jokes because you haven't heard them. There was a great picture 2 or 3 Sundays ago. The Angels are playing the A's in Oakland, and there's teddy bears. Did I tell you this last night? There's teddy bears in the A's have had cardboard fans, but they've put these life-size teddy bears in the seats.
Huh.
And they're there. And so I was on Fox Sports Radio, and I saw the picture, and a guy reached over a fly ball down the left field line, and a guy reached into the stands to get it. And the guy on Fox says, well, if that was a what's the phrase? If there were fans there, they would have interfered with that.
Right.
And I said, actually, it's Oakland, and they never sell tickets out there, so he wouldn't have had any problem whatsoever. Actually, I wouldn't have even put the Bears there.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's been good. The conventions are supposed to be these massive showcases, and half of it's on tape, and I think that's weird.
Right.
Part of it is the humanity of just watching these guys live. I'm not saying they should have had full-on conventions because, again, we're in a pandemic, and that's not the option. But if you know, and never in August have I had basketball, hockey, and baseball. You know, like, I'm sorry, I had a hard time captivating my attention. And this is, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. I watch both conventions, and I do.
Yeah.
And I watch both of them, and I kept an eye on it. But man, when some of the speeches were amazing. The one woman who her father in Arizona died. She was dead on, and good for her. And she showed a lot of bravery, and that's not easy to do. It's even harder if there's 20,000 people in the arena. And that's, Bernie was on tape, and Michelle Obama gave a great speech, but she's on tape. And Eva Longoria, what is the point of that? What was she doing there?
Well, it's interesting because we just had the conversation. Which sport is more affected by not having fans? Football, 80,000 people. Basketball, political rallies, big deal when there's no fans. I mean, for Michelle Obama to give that great speech, but tape it so early, she didn't even know that Kamala Harris was the vice president. To me it's a waste. You couldn't have waited 2 days or reshot it or something.
Or added something in or something.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And, they talk about the ratings going way down. Well, it's, again, less compelling when it's not live because you can tape it and watch it later. You're going to see the highlights, and it's not live anyway. It's like watching the 81 World Series. So there's a lot, and both conventions are affected the same way. I mean, they had, Trump flew into an airport hangar, had 50 people there, but at least the energy made it live.
Right, you could see that.
And I think that's.
But I don't know who those people were, and I didn't see any masks. And again, all you got to say is Tulsa, Oklahoma, because Herman Cade died because of it.
Yeah, well, they were wearing masks that I saw, or they're far enough apart. They're outdoors. However you want to put it. But again, just having that many people, makes it engaging because it's live. It's interactive. People can ask a question, and it's a tough thing, because. Biden's been accused of hiding from the press for months, not doing a real press conference in 3-4 months. At some point,
which I don't know why he can't do a press conference. He can do it socially distant, and I'm not saying he needs to go to campaign stops, but just be more visible.
Well, and then what I'm saying is that without the live audience, it really takes the life out of the convention, Democrat or Republican, right? It's just so different not having a life presence. They talk about Biden, is he energizing or not energizing? No way to tell. And obviously his now he's going to do his speech from Delaware. So it's a missing in this in this setting, and I think you'll see it on both sides because both sides are doing.
Muted,
I don't know what the Republican one's going to look like.
Yeah, and we're so fractured, and everything is so ugly, and the rhetoric has been so nasty. And, it's been one of those situations where I don't think, in my opinion, and again, this is my opinion, I have many friends, including people I do shows with, that are Republicans, and I have great respect for the Republican Party. The Republican Party is not the right-wing nut jobs who are, I'm not wearing a mask, and COVID's dumb, and that's fluff. And there's a difference between being a Republican, and like I said, I have very close friends that are Republicans, including you, and I don't have any judgment. I don't judge. And yesterday, this was all over Facebook. My dear friend, and I told you this off the air, my dear friend Jay Feely. Jay Feely is the former kicker, in the NFL, kicked for the Seahawks, the Giants, the Jets, a bunch of other teams. And I know him from his days with the Jets. I did a show with him. And, he's been on my podcast, and he's just a great guy. He got my kid a toy when he came. Like, he was playing. Jay Feely, this is how good a guy Jay Feely is. He was playing. So he was doing practice and all that stuff. And yeah, he's a kicker. He's not a lineman, but it's not the point. He's playing, and he came over to tape a show. And he came over because I had this set up to tape a show. And he brought my then 2-year-old daughter a toy. He stopped off at a toy store and got her a toy. Like, you don't have to do that. You're no way. And it blew my mind away. Anyway, Saturday he played golf with Trump.
Right.
And he played golf with Trump, and he wrote this message. I can find it. He wrote this whole message, and man, did he get crushed. I mean, this is what he wrote. He wrote, "What an epic day. Had the honor of playing golf with President Trump today, and he and I were partners. Truly enjoyed talking about our families, talking politics, and listening to his earnest desires for our country. We had an unexpected flyover from 2 F-15s as we stood on the tee box. I started with a birdie and closed with a birdie. Truly unbelievable. I'm still amazed I got the opportunity to do that." And he was trending on Twitter Sunday because that's when Trump supposedly found out about his brother. So his brother dies, and he's playing golf with Jay Feely. And I was caught in the middle because I'm not Should the president be playing golf when there's a pandemic going on and his brother's in the hospital and all these things? And I get all that. But I also, that's my friend, and I'm not letting him get thrown over the coals. And he was trending on Twitter, not in a good way. And I felt bad. And Sports Illustrated is like, "We have to do a story. Jay Feely, you have to do an interview." I'm like, he's not taking my call. Like, what are you, out of your goddamn mind?
Well, the same thing happened to Brett Favre the week before. A guy with a Hall of Fame career. They're all saying, well, he should be erased from history because he played golf with Trump. I mean, the personal venom is something that is so out of control. And you want to talk policy, you want to talk what's best. Great, all for it. The personal venom, is something, this whole cancel culture. Oh, if you say the wrong thing, I'm going to make sure you never work again the day in your life. You saw it with the Houston Rockets photographer. He forwarded a tweet about Kamala Harris, which was not flattering, the Joe and the Ho. 30 years of work, he's fired immediately. It's like, can't you make an apology and get a fine and isn't there a middle ground somewhere for forwarding something insensitive? How many times have you told a joke and you go, boy, that just didn't go over well. Oh, my life is over. And, I think this whole, you say the wrong thing and your career is over. You say the wrong thing and you're banned for life. You do something stupid and, you're hounded the rest of your life. I mean, come on, that's, now you're talking about, what happened to, forget your right of free speech, just the common courtesy of being able to, say the wrong thing and recover from it and say, I got that. I learned from it. I apologize for it. That's not who I am. Wow, did that come out? I realized something I didn't know before. I mean, that experience is gone. Comedians being able to, cross the line, doesn't exist anymore. And, that's to me is the whole bridge too far thing. That's
it's too much.
That's
it's too fractured.
Whatever side you're on. I don't get it. And my opinion is that if you can't stand up to scrutiny, then you don't have the right position. But to yell somebody down means that you don't have a very strong point. If you got to win by brute, not by idea. And that's the part that gets me all the time.
I just, like I said, I've never in my life ever had a problem. I always thought it was weird because when I was growing up, people would always say, "You don't bring up politics at dinner time. You don't do that. That's not right." And I didn't understand that because I'd be learning things in like social studies and I'd be like, well, why can't we do this? And, and I grew up in the 80s. So Ronald Reagan was the president and I dug him. I thought he was very debonair and he said things really nicely. And I remember his speech when the Challenger exploded. I thought that was really he showed leadership, and I like that. And even George Bush, who screwed up in Iraq, and I don't want to talk about Katrina, but when 9/11 happened and he was standing on the rubble And he says, and you tell those guys we're going to hear from us. Like, I was like, right the hell on, like, right on. And then, and while he was still in office, I met George Bush, and he was the funniest dude, and I had a great meeting. And then he sent a picture, and I'm going to get the picture. Hold on one second. Talk amongst yourselves.
Well, it's funny. So you talk about, being able to play golf with the president, the respect for the office. When Obama was in office, I had the opportunity to go to the White House to do an event there. It was a, cocktail party type event, and Obama came and spoke. Biden was there. Supreme Court justices to tour the White House. To be able to have that experience, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, to have the grandeur of being able to experience that up close, and to see the president in action up close, and to get to talk to a Supreme Court justice and senators and congressmen. I mean, it's when you can have that experience, the respect for that, it still means something. And the fact that you don't like the guy or you don't like his policies. The thing that always gets me is the level of venom that's in the conversation, both directions. And, obviously more towards Trump than away from Trump, because just the level of venom is just,
well, he brings it on.
Punishing. It's amazing he can get up every day. But even when you see the people who shouldn't be venomous, reporters, guys I respect, the CNN guys, Wolf Blitzer, John King, these guys who I know who have done NBA events, All-Star Weekend, it's hard to muster the same respect when I see it just so unreportery, so partisan,
I don't
so
disagree.
name-calling.
I don't
disagree. That's it. I mean, that shouldn't be that way. Right. I mean, that's not how it should be.
And it wasn't like that for John McCain, and it wasn't like that for Mitt Romney, and it wasn't like that for John Kerry. And I'm not saying any of those guys should have been president. I'm not going there, And we had a nasty fight in 2000. I remember that one, and people remember that. And it didn't have the venom that it has now, and the name calling and the viciousness. It's so wrong. But I will say, so my quick story, and I when I was at the Nationals opener, Washington Nationals opener, Hal Bodley, who was a longtime USA Today writer, he was working for MLB, and he knew George Bush from when George Bush owned the Rangers, the Texas Rangers. Right. And he set up an interview, and we all had to get vetted. Even though I wasn't doing the interview, we all had to get vetted by the Secret Service. We had to give all our information and all that stuff. And we were in this booth. We were in one of the press booths, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, here he comes, and George Bush opens the door, and he goes, "Do I have the right room?" And he goes, "Do you guys all work for Major League Baseball?" And he came over and he shook everybody's hand. There were 11 people in that room. He shook everybody's hand. And he goes, "You guys work for Major League Baseball?" And so we're in a semicircle. And we go, "Yeah." And he goes, "So my friend, the cheapskate Bud Selig, signs your checks?" And he said, "Yeah." And I don't know why he looked at me, but I was like off to the side. And he just looks at me and he just goes, "Do they pay you a lot?" And I had to react, and I just go, "Actually, Mr. President, I'd love to ask you about that." And like the whole place laughed, and we stopped. And before the interview, they took a photo, and we didn't ask for the photo. We couldn't ask for it, Like we couldn't, like we didn't bring our cameras, and I don't even know if I guess the iPhone had just come out. And about 6 weeks later, there was this like big envelope sent to the MLB offices, and it was this photo signed by President Bush, like personalized photos signed by President Bush that they didn't have to do. And I took them home and I framed it, and this is it. So this is the picture, and you see Bush. Yeah, Bush is right there. Mm-hmm. I'm right there. And all those people, I'm trying to get it so there's no glare. And it was awesome. And it was so nice. And I didn't vote for George Bush, but I liked him. And it doesn't matter. Would you frame a pic if today's Prez shook your hand? He wouldn't shake my hand, because if he found out who I was related to, So Donald Trump had an issue with my family. I've told this story before. I think I've told you before. Donald Trump had 2 issues with my family. And if he knew who I was related to, he wouldn't shake my hand. I don't think.
Hard to say. He certainly, works with his enemies, and so it's hard to say. Like I said, when I went
I'm not leaving my house, so who knows?
Yeah, the Obama White House. My dad had, he was a basketball fan, so it was, it was me, my dad, and Wendy and Logan, my wife and son, and my dad presented Obama with a top 50 poster.
Oh, that's awesome.
Brought it up and gave it to the Secret Service guy. Here it is, autograph, and they got that kind of thank you note, back in the mail, and so it's. Again, no matter which side you're on, he's the president. He's, there should be a level of respect there, and the fact that things have turned so into venom and name calling, it's a shame. It's hard to be, it's hard to be in the middle anymore. If you're not on one end, you're a traitor. If you're not on the other end, you're something else, and it's when most people are in the middle, and it's being driven so much by this this incredible outside energy. It's it's a shame there, and I don't know the solution anymore. I don't think is there somebody who can bring the sides together?
Well, I don't know.
Has it become so polarized?
There's only one chance. There's only one chance, because if it's the other way, it's not going to be. And I don't know that he can. I'm not a huge fan, but he has to be the lesser of 2 evils. Has to be.
Well, is he? But then there's the question: is he even running the show anymore?
I don't know. I'm not.
It is. It's a tough.
I'm not debating. I'm not.
It's a crazy thing out there.
I don't know, but I know what I see. I know what's out there. He's Andrew writes, I can tell the story if you'd like, because I've told the story on this show before. He says, you think Republicans will just sit silent if Biden wins and socialism takes over? No, I don't think they will. But if he has control of the House and the Senate, he'll get more done. I mean, that's just because we're fractured. We're a fractured country, and this is what it is. And I'm not a huge Bernie Sanders guy, but man, Canada's got something good going on, and they handle coronavirus really, really well. Why? Because they're goddamn unified. And I'm not saying I like their plan. I'm not saying that's the best way to work. I'm not saying that socialism works or any of that. That's not what my point is. My point is I'd like one plan. And you know what? This is a world where if you don't like the government, go somewhere else. But here, everything's fractured. We can't even get college football right. It's just everything is vitriol and venom, and this bullshit with the post office is so stupid. It's so dumb, and it is nasty, and it's argumentative, and it's just wrong. It's wrong all over the place. And I don't care if you're. I didn't even realize that Murphy was a Democrat. Governor Murphy in New Jersey, he kicked ass and took names, and he made a lot of enemies because he shut down a lot of businesses. But now we went from having 8,000 people in hospitals to now we have about 55 out of 9 million people. We're the most dense populated state. New Jersey got it right. New Jersey got it right. Is it because he's a Democrat? I don't know. All I know is he stood up and he acted like a leader.
And the question is, do we even have to ask? Can't we look at the policy?
Right, I don't
and
care.
Say, did this work? And we can't even do that anymore. It's like, oh, well, it's a Democrat state, so this. Oh, it's a Republican state, so that. It's like he did it his way, and here's the result. They did it this way, here's the result. What's the better way?
Right, and I've said all along. And again, if you think this is political, the governor of Florida looks like a member of the Legion of Doom. He is one of the biggest idiots I've ever seen. And I don't care where he comes from, and I don't care who voted for him. He's killing people. And people are dying because of this guy's ignorance. That's all. It's a fact. And
so why don't we talk about the fact instead of the why do we need the idiot conversation? He's doing a certain thing. Is that a better way or a worse way? Remember, going into this, nobody knew the answer. People were trying different things, trying to figure it out. We didn't even know it was a virus for a while. So why is he an idiot? Because he tried it one way. It either worked or it didn't.
Well, because he tried it because he saw New York and New Jersey, and he did his own thing. He saw the way it was working. He saw what Italy did. He saw what New Zealand did. He saw what Canada did. He saw the evidence and said, screw it. I'm going to do what the president wants because I want to be his boy. And he did it. And he told people to go to clubs, and he opened bars, he opened beaches, and people were dying left and right. And now there's a spike, and it's out of control. And people were fleeing Florida because of this clown. And he looks like he's sinister, like he's going to sit next to the Riddler and the Scarecrow, right, and listen to Lex Luthor give the next battle for the Legion of Doom. Well,
certainly no bombast or opinion there. So anyway, on that note.
All right, my friend. Thank you very much. I would say, how's your you give out your Twitter handle. If you can see on the top of the screen there, you see my Twitter handle. That's my Instagram, which I don't know how to do, but I have it. And my YouTube channel, which supposedly this show has been streaming on YouTube and Facebook. And my friend from Italy, she's a reporter in Italy, and she was watching part of our show in the beginning. When you were talking about your son, remember I was saying something about if your son was a guard?
Right.
She watched that part on Facebook, which I thought was really
very cool,
which I didn't know you could do. So I'm learning all this technology stuff too. No show tomorrow because Jim says, great having Danny back. Jim's a guy who listened to us on the radio. No show tomorrow.
Great to be back.
We have a big SAG-AFTRA thing going on because their health insurance is falling apart. And we've got that coming on. But Thursday, Jay Mariotti is in the house, and he's going to do the 1 o'clock show. And then Atan is putting together, and I haven't heard what he's got yet, but it's always going to be interesting. He's putting together a watch party for the Portland Trailblazers and the Los Angeles Lakers. Game 2. Game 1's tonight. Game 2. And they did it. And look at that. Esther's on the screen. She said, thanks for the shout out. And look at that. That's so cool. You can comment on Facebook and it goes on the screen. And I didn't even know that. I am learning this technology thing. This looks cool. And the only question I have is, should I put music on while we're talking? And is there a function where you can turn us down and pump the music up and say, screw these guys. They don't make any sense.
As long as I don't have to sing. That would be bad.
No, that would be bad. And yes, you have to add me on Facebook because that's how you can see the show on Facebook. But I don't know what it does to the Twitch numbers, so I don't know. I'm learning this on the fly. We'll see you next time.